The first cold snap hit harder than usual that fall, and that's when I realized I had a serious problem on my hands. I live up in the Colorado backwoods, kind of off-grid, but still close enough to town if you don't mind winding mountain roads and the occasional elk traffic jam. Name's Mitch. Used to be a software engineer, burnout at 39, took my savings, and built myself an A-frame cabin with a view of the Rockies and a propane tank out back that powered everything from heat to hot water to my ancient stovetop espresso machine. Now, here's the thing. I'm technically part of a local HOA. Didn't know that when I bought the land was buried in the fine print. But I figured, it's just a formality. What could they possibly care about way up here? Turns out, one person cared. Her name was Beverly Greer, HOA president. 60s, ex-real estate broker, moved to the mountains for fresh air and governance, as she put it. She had that clipped tone like she spoke exclusively in bullet points. First year, it was petty stuff. She left notes on my door about my satellite dish being visible from the trail. Then it escalated. One day I get this official-looking letter saying the HOA has installed a new access gate at the entrance to the mountain road ostensibly for safety, but with a 5-ton vehicle limit. My propane delivery truck weighs 7. I called Beverly. She said, "We're protecting the integrity of the road. You'll have to find an alternative delivery method." Like what? Pack mules. That would be within regulation, she said, deadpan. So I tried to reason. Tried to appeal to logic, to the cold hard fact that I'd be without heat. But she wasn't interested. She said, "We have to consider the collective. Perhaps electric heating would be more sustainable." Electric heating. On a mountain. With my solar setup already stretched. It wasn't just petty anymore. It was dangerous. I called the propane company. They were sympathetic but firm. No road access, no delivery. I asked them to drop the tank off at the gate. I'd figure it out. They said they weren't allowed to do that without HOA sign-off. I went to the sheriff. He said, "Civil matter. Can't help you there, Mitch. Maybe talk to the board. Or get creative." I stewed on that for a while. Get creative. Now, I'm not one to escalate unless I have to. But Beverly underestimated one thing. I spent 2 years working at a startup that designed logistics software for emergency services. I know how to move things fast, cheap, and airborne. I put out feelers. Called in a favor from a buddy I hadn't seen since college, Jake. Jake owns a crop dusting business and a modified Bell 206 helicopter. I asked, "Ever lifted propane?" He goes, "Nope. But I lifted a cow once." That'll do. We devised a plan. The propane company would discreetly fill 2 drums and strap them down for airlift. Jake and I prepped a drop zone right by my cabin, flat spot between 2 pines, marked with orange tarps. I checked the bylaws. Nowhere did it mention airspace restrictions. All Beverly controlled was the ground. Saturday morning, 28 degrees. I stood on my porch in a parka and thermal socks, sipping bitter coffee, waiting to hear the chop of rotor blades. And oh boy, did I hear them. Jake came in low, dramatic as hell because of course he did. He had the barrels rigged on a sling line, swinging a little but stable. Beverly came tearing up the trail in her Subaru like the mountain was on fire. She skidded to a stop just outside my property line and started waving her arms like she was guiding traffic on an aircraft carrier. I waved back. With a grin. Jake hovered, lowered the barrels. Smooth as butter. Didn't touch a single tree branch. He gave me a salute from the cockpit, then peeled off like he was escaping a war zone. Beverly came stomping up, demanding to know what I thought I was doing. "Receiving a delivery," I said. "Didn't say it had to be on wheels." She sputtered something about FAA violations, but I'd already checked. As long as Jake wasn't landing and the cargo didn't drop on anyone, we were golden. She stormed off, said the board would hear about this. I said, "Make sure to tell them the coffee's hot again." The video, because of course I recorded it, went viral. Titled it, "How to Deliver Propane When Your HOA Hates You." Thousands of views. Comments ranging from legend to "Where do I find a Jake?" Even got an email from a guy in Alaska asking if I'd considered doing an airlift consultancy. A week later, the board had an emergency vote. The access gate remained, but exceptions were written in for essential utility deliveries. Beverly was quietly voted out 6 months later. Word is she moved to a condo in Scottsdale. I still live in that A-frame. Jake visits every now and then. We sit by the fire and laugh about the time we outmaneuvered bureaucracy with a helicopter and a little bit of spite. And you know what? It wasn't just about heat. It was about being told you can't when you know damn well you can. So let me ask you, was I in the wrong? Or did she finally meet someone who wasn't scared of her rulebook? Let me know in the comments. And remember, when they block the road, take to the sky. They say the first rule of buying your dream home is to check the plumbing. But the real rule, the one no one warns you about, is to run a full background check on the HOA president. If I had, I never would have ended up dangling 2 propane barrels from a helicopter in the middle of winter while my neighbor Carol screamed about micro fissures. It started like every modern-day frontier fantasy. My name's Scott Harper. I cashed out my Silicon Valley burnout fund, sold my shoebox condo, and bought an A-frame cabin tucked on the ridge of a place called Maple Hollow, a town so small it didn't even show up properly on GPS. I wanted peace, pine trees, and a break from humans. And for a while, it was perfect. The quiet hit different up there. You could hear the wind breathe. The fireplace made the air smell like cedar, and the floor creaked just enough to remind you were alive. Then, a week in, she arrived. Carol Mathers, president of the Maple Hollow Estates HOA, dressed in head-to-toe beige, wielding a 3-ring binder that weighed more than my dog. Carol didn't knock, she declared. Introduced herself like she was unveiling a statue in her own honor. She handed me the binder and said, "We find that a cohesive aesthetic protects property values. Translation, obey or suffer." I flipped through the rules later that night. Pages on mailbox colors. Approved flower species. Wind chime decibel levels. I thought it was funny. A little over the top, sure, but funny. But then came the gate. It showed up one morning like a bad omen. A wrought iron beast with an automatic keypad and a smug little sign. Weight limit, 5 tons. Enforced. Problem is, the only road up the ridge was HO owned and our propane deliveries came on 25-ton trucks. My tank was down to a quarter. We were heading into winter. The siege had begun. I tried talking to Carol. Walked down to her place, past flower beds that looked like math equations, and said, politely, that her gate was going to leave us all freezing. She smiled that smile, you know, the one, and said, "Perhaps you should have considered logistics before moving to such an exclusive community." I wasn't the only one up there. There were 2 other houses, one owned by snowbirds who were already in Florida, and another by a family man named Doug. I pleaded with Doug, told him we needed to push back. But he just shrugged and said, "Man, Carol once tried to fine us for a basketball hoop. I can't go through that again." So I was alone. I tried everything. Hauled back barbecue tanks from the hardware store until my trunk sagged. Called a lawyer who basically said, "Sue if you've got the money or move." I even got the sheriff involved. Deputy Morales came out, stared at the gate, sighed, and said, "What you've got here is a Class A Karen infestation." But he couldn't help. "Private road," he said. "No criminal violation. Just civil misery. Get creative," he told me. And that's when it hit me. Carol ruled the road, but not the sky. I found a guy named Hank McAllister, calls himself Skyhook Hank, who ran a small helicopter delivery service out of an old barn 2 counties over. He sounded like he ate gravel for breakfast, but he didn't flinch when I asked about airlifting propane. In fact, he laughed. "I've flown weirder," he said. "We plan the drop for Tuesday. 2 200-gallon barrels, lifted from a logging turnout at the base and flown right into my yard. Cost me more than a new roof, but it was worth every penny." Tuesday morning, I was up before the sun. I'd laid out a giant orange tarp next to my tank. Checked the weather. Clear skies. Then I heard it, the whump 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 of Hank's old Bell helicopter cutting through the silence. And just like that, over the trees, came my salvation, 2 massive barrels swinging like pendulums under a steel dragonfly. Carol showed up 3 minutes later in her spotless white SUV, hair shaking loose from its hairspray prison. "What in God's name do you think you are doing?" she shrieked. "Getting a delivery," I yelled back over the rotor noise. "No bylaw against helicopters." I checked. She tried everything, called the sheriff, the FAA, her lawyer. Deputy Morales showed up and said, deadpan, "Looks legal to me." Hank gave him a thumbs up from the cockpit. Carol was fuming so hard I thought her visor might melt. The barrels landed. Smooth. Elegant. My propane guy Dave pulled up in his pickup and said, "You're a legend." Even Doug, the cowardly neighbor, wandered over later. "That was amazing," he said. "You think I could get that pilot's number?" By nightfall, my house was warm again. I cracked a beer, watched the sky turn lavender, and smiled like I hadn't in weeks. Then my phone buzzed. It was a selfie from Hank in the cockpit, mustache gleaming, the sunset behind him. Anytime you need a hot tub, the caption read. So yeah, Carol still runs the HOA. But things are different now. No one messes with the guy who airlifts propane. Not unless they've got a helicopter of their own. And I've still got Hank on speed dial. Now, let me ask you this. If your HOA blocked you from heating your house, would you go this far? Would you fight fire with rotor blades? Or would you cave like Doug? Leave a comment below. Let's talk about what real community means. And hey, maybe share this story with someone stuck dealing with a Carol of their own.